Today we're going to talk about one of the most unfortunate accidents that has ever fallen upon mankind. This is the story of an evil, mad scientist named Kathleen Kennedy. Her intentions were noble. She wanted to create more Star Wars. You see, there was a legendary figure of the past, George Lucas, who had created an incredible world with compelling characters that we all loved and enjoyed. And Kathleen Kennedy wanted to continue this tradition, but she wanted to do it in such a way as that we could now be more inclusive, more diverse, more politically friendly to the world. So how could she possibly do this when the great George Lucas was no longer producing Star Wars? And she came up with her idea. You see, the relatively recent technology of cloning gave her the idea that she could simply make a duplicate of George Lucas and, with just a little bit of tweaking, improve upon the original. What if she could combine George Lucas with the DNA of a great filmmaker? So instead of schlocky films, but with really cool characters and settings, she could make great films through and through. So she stole just a little bit of DNA from Steven Spielberg to combine with him, so that hopefully we'll have a much better final product. She then realized, of course, that we had to make feminism the core of all future Star Wars films. But how to do that? She could simply put in the DNA of one of her favorite feminists, but that just doesn't seem like it would work. The masculine and feminine chromosomes conflicting, it would just create... And then it hit her. The most brilliant idea of her entire career. So she carefully removed all of the Y chromosomes from both the George Lucas and Spielberg DNA. The new creature would retain its male appearance but be female in every way and be willing to put forth her feminist agenda. It would be perfect. It would be Star Wars, finally, the way that she had always imagined. However, sadly, she could not predict what ultimately would happen. This strange mixture of genetics had created a beast that she just could not stop. The genetic material, as it combined, began to implode on itself, creating the opposite effect of everything that George had intended. The resulting creature that would come out of this mixture would be the opposite of George Lucas in every way. The good news is that instead of a crappy filmmaker, he was now quite gifted at making movies. The bad news was that now his compelling characters were absolute crap. Everything good became bad. Everything right went wrong. Up became down. Light became dark. Sith became Jedi. We have entered into a Bazarro world version of Star Wars, and the world would never be the same. First of all, let me say thank you so much for watching. I genuinely do appreciate it. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so that we can keep the conversation going. If you really like what you see, then consider giving me some support on Patreon. The link will be in the description below. Any and all support gathered from Patreon will go to improving the quality and quantity of the videos on this channel. Now, let's get back into this. All joking aside, it really does feel like the new Star Wars films are set in a Bazarro world version of the Star Wars universe. Now, for those of you that don't know what I'm referring to, Bazarro world comes from some old Superboy and Superman stories that involve an imperfect duplicate of Superman named Bazarro. He did everything the opposite of what he should. For example, while Superman might rescue your cat from a tree, Bazarro might fly in, take your cat, and put it in the tree, thinking that he was helping. And in a very real way, the new Star Wars films feel like they are the exact opposite of the old films in almost every way, both in front of and behind the camera. In the original films, and yes, even in the prequels, George Lucas was the creative force behind the saga. Prior to Star Wars, he had woefully little experience as a filmmaker, and he was not a particularly good film director. And he was a horrible dialogue writer. But he was great at crafting a story. George put story above all else, and he at least attempted to direct the films and let the rest kind of fall into place. By contrast, the newer films, Kathleen Kennedy is the creative force behind these films. She has worked on some of the best films of the late 20th and early 21st century. She's been nominated for 8 Academy Awards. She's helped produce such iconic films as The Sixth Sense, The Color Purple, E.T., Jurassic Park, the Back to the Future trilogy, and many more. She hires directors to do her work, but story seems to matter very little in her new films. Rather, the priority is put into the systematic injection of a feminist political idea. I'm not saying this because Rey is a female lead in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, or that Jyn is a female lead in Rogue One. Rather, I'm basing this on Kennedy herself, who has said as much in multiple interviews when asked about casting only female leads. She says that she does not owe anything to her male audience, despite the fact that she also recognizes that that male audience is what built up Star Wars in the first place. But it's not just the replacement of good story for propaganda that's made Star Wars the opposite of what it once was. The internal philosophy of Star Wars has become literally the opposite of what it was. In the first 6 films, we see that the universe is divided into 2 camps, the light led by the Jedi and the dark led by the Sith. We learn through the experience of Luke and Anakin that to master the light side of the Force requires intense training and discipline. Jedi must avoid forming attachments so that they do not succumb to being emotional over loss or regret. Jedi must focus on peace and serenity, never using strong emotions while wielding the Force, for that is a gateway to the quick and easy path, the path of passion, anger, fear, the dark side of the Force. Or as Yoda put it,
yes, Jedi's strength flows from the Force, but beware of the dark side. Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side of the Force are they. Easily they flow, quick to join you in a fight. If once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Consume you it will, as it did Obi-Wan's apprentice.
Is the dark side stronger?
No. Quicker, easier, more seductive.
But how am I to know the good side from the bad?
You will know when you are calm, at peace, passive. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. Luke, you must complete the training.
But I can help them. I feel the Force.
But you cannot control it. This is a dangerous time for you, when you will be tempted by the dark side of the Force.
On this all depends. Only a fully trained Jedi Knight, with the Force as his ally, will conquer Vader and his Emperor. If you end your training now, if you choose the quick and easy path as Vader did, you will become an agent of evil.
Patience.
And sacrifice Han and Leia.
If you honor what they fight for, yes.
when he was talking to Luke about it, the dark side is quicker, easier, and more seductive, but not stronger than the light. In the new films, we see the exact opposite. It is Kylo, not Rey, that trains in his use of the Force. Kylo that seeks to break bonds of attachment to things in the past. And Rey taking a ridiculously quick and easy path to mastery of the Force. We see Rey constantly using her fear and anger to master her use of the Force with no consequences. Heck, in The Last Jedi, Luke even calls her out on the fact that she did not even try to resist the dark side of the Force, yet there are no consequences for her actions. Ever. In the end, if we're to believe that The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi are in fact in the same universe as the first 6 films, it is clear that Rey is becoming a Sith Lord, and Kylo, while apparently somewhat misguided, is on the path to becoming a Jedi.